Hey, happy Sunday, everybody. This is Bob, Trade Genius. This is our podcast, and I have Phil on again talking cryptos. And what I wanted to do before I get started, Phil, it looks like, what a difference a week makes, in terms of the activity in the Bitcoin market and some of the altcoins like Solana's almost doubled here in the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to get your take on that. But before we do, I know you and I spoke in January, February when everybody was asking you, hey, what's Bitcoin going to look like this year? And you said, hey, we'll probably put in a low around March, and there's a really good chance that will be the low for the year. And it sure looks like you nailed the bottom. I'm just curious if you think with the Fed going through their cycle here, do you think we may double bottom that, or do you have any thoughts? I know we talked last week about maybe going into the 400 days prior to halving, we should start lifting off. I just wanted to see if anything changed with the action we had here in the last week.
Yeah, I think that we're basically still in what I call the post-halving peak period, where Bitcoin does find a bottom, and then, like you mentioned, that time period before the halving, the next halving, which is around March or April of 2024, really depends on the network solving blocks and how that averages out into that time period. But within that window of time, that's when the next halving is going to be in 2024. So yeah, if you go like 500 days roughly, give or take, historically, we've seen the lows for the cycle by that time, and then we do see the move up start for the next up cycle, which would take us through 2025 into 2026. And at that point, I would be very confident we'd see six-figure Bitcoin. So between then and now, I think we still have risks to the downside as far as finding a bottom. My thought is that we basically are looking at three levels, I think, that are likely to be tested. And this is, let's just assume there's no black swan events between now and then, like a COVID crash. Then I think it's either 30K holds, 25K holds that area, or we may get a deviation down to maybe like 17K briefly that just freaks everybody out and thinks the big crash is coming. And then it quickly comes back up, back into the 20s, and then starts grinding away back up. That would be pretty par for the course, to have kind of like what we call the scare the children move in Bitcoin. Not to say that that's going to happen, but you just have to be cognizant that a lot of times the market gets a little irrational momentarily, and those things can happen. But like I said in the last podcast, the accumulation statistics are much different this time around. So I think that we're probably leaning more towards maybe a shortened bear cycle, if anything. And again, this is outside of any external events that may affect things on a global scale, or any kind of like contagion within the financial markets, because that will still affect Bitcoin, and we saw that in COVID. And we're not to the point where we're so decoupled from the other risk-on assets that we're insulated from that, and that nothing's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin. I can almost guarantee that if any of those events happen, that the price of Bitcoin is going to come down with the rest of the market. So, barring that, that's basically what I see happening. And so worst case scenario would be 17K low, but hopefully it's no more than what we've seen, or similar to what we've seen so far, where we kind of just bottom along 30K, and then we start putting in the next cycle up later in the year.
That's interesting because, during the second year of a first president, the stock cycle has basically the market is essentially flat with a scare the children move in the summer. And I'm just wondering, with Bitcoin maybe on that same trajectory, just because of its own process that they tie together. We both put in lows and the risk assets on the stock side and on the crypto side. So I guess it bears watching. And folks, those who are listening, we're not just fanboys here. We're in this business to make money, And especially in the crypto market, there's a lot of ways people think about it. There are people who are simply hodling, and what we're saying today is really irrelevant to them. There's other people doing long swings where they have a sizable position, but they're adding and subtracting to continually bring their cost of their investment down. And then there's people who are just trading. And so, we try to touch on all those here at Trade Genius, and our job is to just give you the best macro and also trading views that we can. And with that in mind, Phil, do you have anything interesting to share this week in terms of actionable information?
I think right now Bitcoin's trying to find a lower high, meaning that if you look at a daily or weekly chart, we topped out at 60, almost 70K. I think we're in the process of finding a lower high in this part of the cycle. Now, whether that's 53K or 55K remains to be seen. We have to work our way through. I think we're at a this week. I think is kind of key in whether or not we break higher and do see the 50s. Otherwise, if we roll over, then I think we can see back under 40 again. But I do think this week's fairly key. We've had this bounce up off of basically getting out of the 30s, coming up into where we are today, up above 46 at the time of this podcast. And so, yeah, I think this is kind of a pivotal week as far as getting up higher into the 50s, and we could certainly see that this week. But again, it does depend too. I mean, we have some macro global issues going on. Obviously, the stuff in Ukraine, and so if if the equity markets roll over, I don't think Bitcoin's getting up there. Okay, because it's still correlated to a degree with the equity market. So we're kind of handcuffed in that regard. If the markets are kind of just sideways this week, then Bitcoin certainly can deviate to a degree and make that move up. But if markets are rolling over, trending down, heading for new lows, Bitcoin's coming down with that. So
That's interesting because typically April and December are very bullish months for the stock market, with two very notable exceptions. One being in the year 2000 when the tech bear market rolled over, and the
mhm.
other time is when in 2007 when they started raising interest rates. So and we have, I think, both those scenarios playing in front of us on the stock side, and so it does bear watching. It makes it hard, at least from a trading standpoint. There's at least on the stock side, there seems to be a lot of things that are moving that are we call late cycle. A lot of the energy names are moving. Precious metals look like they're ready to get a bid, and then on the crypto side, I've noticed too, because I have a big interest in Solana, that it took off. And is there anything going on in the alt market? It seems like a lot of them have lifted in the last week or two.
Yeah, if you look at the chart we have up, I mean, this is our basically our roadmap for alt BTC. And as you can see, we back tested our trend band and shot up here. Um, and we do seasonally see bullishness in April and May, kind of like the stock market within altcoins. So, we measure this in terms of how the alts are performing against BTC, so alt BTC cycles. Because when they're going up against the price of Bitcoin, usually that means the market's really strong. I mean, even though alts are outperforming Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going up in price too. So it's just the bullish window in the market. Lately, we've had nice oscillations in the alt BTC cycle. Most often, that was the case prior to, like, say, 2020 into 2021. You look at most altcoins like Litecoin and things like that, just a very long downtrend in terms of the price of Bitcoin. So I like to look at the way these cycles go as how, or at least in terms of how alts are priced in value against Bitcoin. So it does a good job of pinpointing the turns in the market, where basically you're just seeing a lot of money coming back into the crypto market cap space. So as long as this is continues to trend up, we should be good. And if we get either like one of our trade genius indicators like a sniper sell, or the trend band flips over, we get a trend band sell or something like that, then we'll have some warnings that maybe this window's done. But typically, given the activity and given the seasonality, you would be reasonable. It would be reasonable to expect this to continue into May. Now, we may have a pullback here and there, but the majority of this move probably doesn't top out until we get into May. Then we could see more of a pullback like we saw back here, and then you probably see another. Usually, there's some sort of move going into after May. There's usually some sort of bounce as we kind of head into summer, and then summer is interesting because depending on the years, that you can have a bearish summer or a bullish summer. And what I found is that if it's a bearish summer going into September, then September is a good month to look for bargains. If it's a bullish summer going into September, you want to take profits. September is just kind of like a pivot point depending on which direction summer went. But summer is kind of a wait and see period because it really depends. It varies from year to year how price reacts during those months, and then most often, as has been the case with altcoins, we're talking about a market that's only been around for 7 or 8 years, really, and for most alts less than that. But going into Q4, you usually have a general pullback most every year going into Q4, and then Q4 you start looking for bargains, um, and that can be a matter of bottoming in November or bottoming in December. Sometimes I've even seen cycle bottoms in October. It's something you got to keep an eye on. That's why we like to have our indicators and these alt charts that kind of give us a roadmap into those zones, so we can start seeing if we're getting early indications. Like if a sniper fire is going into October, then hey, maybe we're going to get an early turn, and we can start legging in on alt plays at that time. So that's the best. That's how I like to play them, and when we are giving out entry signals to the clients and things like that. So yeah, that's basically how I see the alt market at this point going forward to the rest of the year.
Yeah, does anything, before I let you go today, does anything tickle your fancy in terms of a coin that you think may have a move setting up that hasn't already taken off?
Um, I think that Loopring, LRC, Loopring, I think that has potential for. I think if you can get it, under a buck. Um, Now that might mean you could get it at 50 cents too, but I think if you can get it down at those levels, I think as you go into Q4, I think that it'll play out nice. Now, I'm very much of the mind when you're in this part of the cycle, when you're dealing with alts, that just ride the waves up, right, and then get off when it looks like things are rolling over, because they're not going to just be unless things really mature and change. The altcoin markets aren't just going to be grinding up all year usually. Okay, so you're going to have these nice windows of appreciation where like things like are popping 50, 60%, and then they'll give it all back as we go through the year. So you're better to just be in and out, and then I think like some of your best opportunities happen as you right before Q4. That dip, I think, is when you see some of the most explosive moves, because things bottom out, and then you usually get either you're jamming up into December, or right after the first of the year, you're getting a really nice move, and so those windows are usually the most powerful. But yeah, LRC is one that I think has potential for going higher, and bigger percentage gains.
Oh, super. Hey, Phil, I really appreciate your time once again. And for folks listening, so Phil is my partner here at Trade Genius, and he focuses on the crypto markets and Forex markets. He has a massive database, high percentage wins, trades binary options that way. and we also trade futures together. So there's a lot of ways in which he can help you make money trading with us. And also, if you ever want personal coaching or mentoring, he's absolutely available for that. Just go to tradelikeagenius.com, hit up Matt, get scheduled with him, or just send us an email at tradegenius100 at gmail.com, and we'll take care of you. And so with that, I'm going to let you guys go. And Phil, I always appreciate you taking some time out of your weekend to talk with us.
Anytime. Pleasure to do it.
All right, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.